All right, everyone, we're back with a top 10 list, new top 10 list. First one since I did a top 10 best war movies of the past 50 years back in December. And I'm ready to spark some controversy with top 10 chips. Some of you have already asked, Ross, how can we include tortilla and corn at the same time? Should we also include chicharrones and others? Let's not get too crazy here. Let's just go with the common law here. If it's fried and it's corn and tortilla, and flour, we'll count it as a chip. Okay. These other things, a little bit more like a snack, like a snack mix or something like that. So we're not too crazy out there. We're gonna keep it to corn, flour, fried variants to call them chips, and that's the main standard of what we're evaluating. The second part of what we're evaluating is none of those like artsy fartsy kind of brands that you find only at like Whole Foods or something. You know what I mean? Like it might be good, okay? It might be good, but if it's only allowed into the elite grocery stores, is it really for the we're looking for the populist chips here, right? This is the populist party chip, okay? So we're not looking for necessarily just the best tasting. We're also looking for, is it mass marketed? Is it for the mainstream population, or is it just for the elitist? We're gonna say no to the elitist. We're gonna say yes to the populist, and go with the populist in general here category. So we got corn and flour fried, kind of more of a populist category. Not looking for like the small niche market chips of dill lime pickle chip or whatever it is. We're trying to keep it pretty standard here. So that being said, I'm going to give two honorable mentions before I start off on the top 10. Go through about 6 or 7, give a couple more honorable mentions, and then finish off with the top 3 or 4. Okay. So without further ado, a couple almost top 10 chips that made the cut, but didn't quite get there. Honorable mention status, very good. But I think the reason I chose these two as honorable mentions is they're good, but they're good in spurts. You know what I mean? They're not a standard that you always will get, no matter when you go to the grocery store or when you go to the I guess to the vending machine or something like that. You don't always get these, but they're very good. So the first one I put as honorable mention is the Fritos chili cheese. I mean, Fritos chili cheese, they're good on their own, right? Whereas the typical Frito corn chip, very good, of course, with lots of different things you can mix with it. Of course, Frito chili pie being the most important, but that's really its own kind of like food group. You know what I mean? So the Fritos original, I don't think we can put in there. It's just most people pass on it on an individual basis. I mean, I was a youth minister for many years, and kids would always pass on just the corn chips by themselves. They're good with other things, but they're not really good by themselves. But the chili cheese variety are awesome. Very, very, very good. They're just real heavy in some sense, really messy in a lot of ways, but they're good in spurts. So that's the honorable mention number 1. Number 2 honorable mention is also very good, and the original variety of this one is really, really good. And this is borderline, maybe top 10, should be in there probably, but I kind of waver back and forth given that I like it sometimes, and then sometimes I'm like, it's the Pringles original. And I love Pringles. I love the branding of it. I love the commercials. I just love how they're packaged. I mean, there's a lot of things about Pringles that are just great. And it was hard for me. I really wanted to put it top 10, but the original is really great. And it's better than like original Lay's and things like that. But it just doesn't get up there for me just as the original potato chip. It just doesn't quite crack the top 10, but it's close, okay? So those are my two first honorable mentions, little group, is you've got the chili cheese Fritos, you've got the original Pringles. All right, number 10. This one could be higher, but it made the cut. It barely made the cut for me. It probably is higher on other people's list, but it is the Cheetos Puffs. Cheetos Puffs are incredible. They are so addictive. You know what I mean? They're so addictive. My only downside to Cheetos Puffs is they seemingly have gotten larger over the years. Are they trying to get you to eat less or something? Because it feels like you're eating like an entire corn on the cob or something when you're eating one of these things. They're as big as like your finger. You know what I mean? Like they're so huge and thick, and of course they're messy. And I think I can only eat like 7 or 8 of them at a time now, whereas it used to feel like when you were younger, right? They were half that size and thickness, and you were eating like, 20 or 30 or whatever. But they're still so good. Always consistently tasty. They're a good variety for a chip. They're not as crunchy, of course, but they've got the puff. It's kind of like a magical taste in a lot of ways. It's very, very good. It's very unique. It's incredible. I think it's still top 10, even though some people would say probably a little higher. Number 9, this one is more of a recent addition for me into the top 10 list of my favorite chips. But it just consistently just wows me how good they are, though you can only eat so many because of how hot they are. It's the Takis Fuego. And Takis are just awesome. They're so good and addictive, and just the amount of seasoning is intense, but that's what makes them so great. And, they're really tightly wound corn chips, really tightly wound, actually. Actually, they're tortillas, but really tightly wound and very, very crunchy, very, very spicy. Again, I'm not super into super spicy heat kind of things, but they're really, really, really tasty, but pretty hot. But number 9 for me is Takis Fuego. Number 8, this one should be higher, I think, for me, but I think it would get a little too controversial if I push it higher. But the Tostitos Hint of Lime, these things are just, maybe one of the most addictive chips you could eat out there. You know what I mean? Because with the Tostitos, you can use it for dipping with salsa or queso or whatever it is. But with the Hint of Lime, you can eat it by itself. And it's like, it is so addictive. I mean, you could just go right through the bag and not even know it. And it's just enough lime that it gives a sense that it's a different kind of chip, but it's not so much that it overwhelms. So it's like, it's kind of the perfect subtle ninja-like chip. It could destroy any diet at any moment because of its flexibility, I think. So I probably should have put it higher than 8. It's so darn good, but I put it at number 8. It really solidifies itself as part of the top 10. Number 7, and then we'll do number 6, and we'll stop. Number 7 is the Kettle Sea Salt and Vinegar. I've got to get a sea salt and vinegar in there. There's a lot of different kinds of chips like this, with the sea salt variety or the vinegar variety, and it deserves to have one on the list. But I think that the Kettle version is the best one. There's just less oiliness to the chip. It's just less messy, and then it's just so consistently good. But you don't have to eat 40 or something to make it feel like that was awesome. You could eat 10 of them and like, that was great. That was a really satisfying snack, right? And that's what's so great about Kettle is that they're cleaner chips, they're less oily, but the taste does not suffer. And I think the product is, they've got a lot of varieties that are very good in Kettle, but I think this is their best one. And this is the one I've gotten the most consistently over the last 5 or 10 years. So Kettle Sea Salt and Vinegar. Number 6, this is probably the most controversial that should it even be on the top 10? I don't know. I think it should be. Is Funyuns. I love Funyuns. Again, there's a uniqueness to it. It's kind of like the crunchy variety of Cheetos Puffs. There's kind of a chip, but something different than the chip, but it's still a traditional chip. It's got kind of a unique branding to it. It's kind of like if you're not in the mood for the traditional chip, it's something that's not traditional, but it still has enough semblance to a chip. I've always loved Funyuns. It's just enough of an onion without it tasting too garlicky or oniony. Love Funyuns. Always will have a small stash around if I could. Probably not too many. Can't just kind of eat tons of them, but I really do enjoy them quite a bit. So I typically would have like a small snack size around of them at some point during the week. So Funyuns, number 6. All right, 2 more honorable mentions, and then we'll finish strong with the top 5, okay? First, and again, I think any of these could make it to the top 10 because of how good they are, taste-wise, consistency. But it's hard to put them in because the top group are so good and so classic. So I think the last 2 of my honorable mention I put as Ruffles Extra Wavy. These are kind of like your super addictive chips because the intense amount of oil they put on this thing, and it's so hard not to eat like a bunch of them, but they make you feel so sick, you know what I mean? So they're so good because you can dip them, you can eat them by themselves. It's like eating a third of a potato at one time, but it's so addictive. There's so much oil in the Extra Wavy Ruffles, and then you can dip them, and it's like a meal. I mean, you know, but that's what makes them so good, is that there's kind of this hardiness to the chip, and the oil is just, it's hard to put them down, right? So it's really good, but it's a little overkill for me. I am going to give you one of my least favorite chips toward the end as well. But it's very addictive. It's very hard to put down. The other one I put on here is On the Border chips. Oh man, On the Border chips. You don't typically eat On the Border chips by themselves. You don't typically, but they are maybe the best chip for dipping around. I mean, just the best chip for dipping around. The consistency, it's a little thicker. It's not kind of one of those very easy breakable chips. You can dip it into the heartiest queso or salsa, and it doesn't blink an eye. And it's just so solid of a chip that you can't eat it by itself as a tortilla chip, and you still enjoy it quite a bit. So it doesn't make it the top 10 for me, though I've bought, you know, just by the bag and obviously at the restaurant too. But it's so good with dipping. It's hard to beat, and it still can be eaten by itself. So it deserves to be probably top 10, but honorable mention for me because there's just, to me, too many others that have the taste quality that elevates them above. So On the Border chips and Ruffles Extra Wavy, honorable mention, very good chips, but don't quite break the top 10. I'm not gonna say this is a terrible chip, but it's just nonsense. It's like buying something that you'd buy at the fair, right? And why do you go to the fair? You go to the fair for the extravagance. You go to the fair for the indulgence. You go to the fair for people watching. It's a carnival. That's what you're doing, right? Well, when you go get yourself Ruffles, what is it? Loaded baked potato, cheese, chives, bacon, and it's like, what? What am I getting here? I have tried this a couple times in my life. I'm like, I can't eat more than 3 of these. It's like going to the fair and saying, I would like chocolate covered butter. You know what I mean? It's insane. It's why am I eating this? I'm punishing myself, right? That's what you're doing when you get these Ruffles with loaded baked potato, bacon, cheese, chives, and sour cream. It's kind of like, no. It's kind of like the everlasting gobstopper from Willy Wonka, you know? It's kind of like, you know, 7 different meals like in the gobstopper, and you're like, this sounds like a great idea. And then you put it in your mouth, start to eat it, and you're like, this is overwhelming me. And so again, not a terrible chip, but it's kind of like, what? So again, I stay away from that. I think I had it twice. I've never tried it again. Just could not do it. It's like eating a full meal all at one time. It's kind of ludicrous, to be honest. That's just my take. All right, here we go. Top 5. We're going to fly right through these for time. I'm trying to keep these videos to 15 minutes. All right, number 5, Sour Cream and Onion by Lay's. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's been many regretful days of eating too many of these in my life. I think by far Lay's best chip. And they've got a lot of good ones. The traditional one, the barbecue one, they got some really good ones, but the sour cream and onion is just killer. It is so good. It's the combination of the extra oily chip with the seasoning, and it's just enough to make it so addictive it's hard to put down. So I think most people would agree with me. That's probably a top 5. Number 4, I kind of wanted to put a little higher, but one eked out above it, but Doritos Cool Ranch. This used to be my number 1. This used to be my absolute favorite chip as a kid. I've started to like some others a little bit more as my palate's changed, I've gotten older. But Cool Ranch is just, it's one of those chips where it's got such a unique taste, and it's such an addictive chip. You know, it's kind of like an anytime goes kind of thing. Whether it's like, you know, after dinner, it's at the ballpark, you know, it's on the way to something, it's at work. I mean, it's so adaptable to anything. It's always so good, but it's not so filling that it kind of takes the place of a meal or something, or it's not like the extra wavy chip that just, you feel so full or something after you eat like 5 or 6. All right, so number 3, this one eked out above it, Ruffles Cheddar and Sour Cream. Oh man, I mean, this guy is just incredible. It's the perfect combination of saying, we're gonna put an extra layer of flavor and taste into this chip without going into the baked potato loaded category, right? It's just like, just enough that it gives it the extra kick of taste with the Ruffles kind of oily chip, you know, classic, but it's got the sour cream in it too. And it's like, and I love the Ruffles cheddar. The Ruffles cheddar cheese is really good. And of course the Ruffles sour cream is good. But when you combine the powers, you know, like Captain Planet, you combine the powers together, Ruffles cheddar and sour cream is just it just knocks it out of the park. It almost breaks into the upper echelon of chip heaven, kind of in a way, but it doesn't quite get there. It can't surpass the last two. And I think everyone probably knows what the last two are. I'm not going on a limb here. Number 2, nacho cheese Doritos. It's kind of one of the most classic chips in the world, and it's hard to not put this one first. However, I think there is one that's better, but it's so good. It has all the classic chip. You know, it's got the oil, it's got the taste, it's got the flexibility. It can go at any meal at any time. It can be a snack, it can be a side, it can be anything without feeling like if you eat 10, you're gonna die. And that's what makes this more flexible and what makes it to the top of the echelon of the chip heaven. Yeah. And number 1, my last chip, Cheetos Crunchy, the original, kind of the original Cheeto. And there's just, I shouldn't have to defend this, but it's the branding, it's the uniqueness, it's the taste, it's all those things combined. Sometimes you want to make your meal out of Cheeto Crunchy chips, you know, you want to make it out of that only. Sometimes you regretfully eat 30 of them and then you wonder, what am I doing with my life? But that's the mark of a great chip. Regret, right? It makes you regret eating 30 of them, right? That's the mark of a great chip. Not, oh, I can only eat 5, I'm good. That's the mark of an honorable mention, right? The mark of a great chip is guilt, regret. It brings it with it, and it makes you feel terrible. And then you're like, I'm not gonna do that again. And then you do it again a week later because they're so darn good. So, Cheeto Crunchy, number 1, without a doubt. Number 2, Dorito Nacho Cheese. Number 3, Ruffles, cheddar and sour cream, or sour cream and cheddar. Number 4, Cool Ranch Doritos. Number 5, Lay's sour cream and onion. Number 6, Funyuns. Number 7, Kettle sea salt and vinegar. Number 8, hint of lime Tostitos. Whew, so good. Number 9, Takis Fuego. Number 10, Cheetos Puffs. Honorable mentions, we got Pringles, we got Ruffles Extra Wavy, we've got On the Border chips, and we've got Fritos Chili Cheese. And then not a terrible chip, but just kind of what are you thinking, is the loaded baked potato Ruffles that basically creates an everlasting gobstopper in a chip in your mouth, and after 3, you want to lay down and die. So that's my top 10 chips list. Feel free to comment, to disagree. Let the controversy begin. May God be with you.